Meanwhile, the country's justice minister has denied that the protesters are responsible for the riot. Now, opposition groups and their supporters say that the vote was rigged, but the identities of those killed and injured is unclear. Mozambique's Police General Commander Bernardino Rafael added that there were prison break attempts at 2 other prisons. Let's delve deep into the situation at the SABC News International Editor Sophie Mokoena. All right, so Sophie, I believe you're on the line. Thanks for joining us at this hour. We are obviously monitoring the developments unfolding from our neighboring country. Yesterday, starting things off, we heard reports that there were prisoners who escaped from the high security prison in Maputo. Perhaps you could start with an update on that escape.
Well, indeed, last night we saw the police head talking about that escape, saying that while this was happening, more than 30 people were killed. It's not clear yet in terms of the final figure of people who have escaped from prison, but it's around 1,500, with the possibility that it might even be a bigger number, as information is still being collected and also being verified. But we saw this morning lots of videos that I received from people in Maputo of the torture and beating of young people, in particular in the streets, and those who allegedly escaped from prison, because you cannot really confirm whether these people are the ones that escaped from prison, because they look very, very young, and therefore you can see that the situation is really, really dire in that country in terms of issues of security. And we also got information. In fact, I was talking to one leader, the mayor of one of the cities there in Mozambique, who is part of the coalition of opposition, saying that the leader, Mondlane, has issued a statement calling on the people of Mozambique not to engage in the destruction of property and violence, but they must continue to protest, even announcing that on the date when the new president is being inaugurated in January, he is also going to do the same. He's going to declare himself a leader of that country, or the president of Mozambique. And therefore this speaks to the tension and the back and forth between the Frelimo leadership and also Mondlane, who is currently in Europe after he left Mozambique some few weeks ago, immediately after election results were announced by the Electoral Commission at that time.
All right, Sophie, thank you for also speaking to the new leader of the opposition, perhaps also sentiments coming through at this hour, because we're obviously looking at how clearly this is becoming a challenging situation for neighboring countries within the SADC region. Has there been a response from the chairperson of SADC organ, the politics, defense and security at large, as we're speaking?
We haven't had any statement from President Sulu Hassan, who is currently the chair of the organ on politics, defense and security. We've saw the president of Zimbabwe, who's the chair of SADC, Emmerson Mnangagwa, last week Monday congratulating Chapo for being elected the president of Mozambique after the Constitutional Council confirmed the results, but disappointed how these are contested results. And therefore, on the other hand, you have the political parties in Mozambique, including Renamo, rejecting these results. And therefore, we haven't had some formal statement from Tanzania, the chair of the organ on politics, defense and security. We know that in relation to the neighbors, South Africa in particular has issued a statement through the Department of International Relations calling for calm, but also calling for engagement of all stakeholders, even South Africa, saying that the country is willing to assist or facilitate the engagement. This morning, as I pointed out, I spoke to one of the members of the opposition parties in that country. I wanted to get a sense in terms of what's their view, which country can assist in this situation. They say to me the only country they feel strong that can play a neutral and a positive role in trying to find a solution is South Africa as a neighbor. I even asked him whether the fact that South Africa is not occupying any position within SADC or the AU, is South Africa best placed to do that? They said they only trust South Africa, and therefore calling on President Ramaphosa to do something about this. Clearly, they still believe that much as South Africa, in terms of the ANC, has a relationship with Frelimo, they still feel that South Africa is better placed to intervene. And when you look at the statement from DERCO is trying to do just that in terms of ensuring that much ANC has got a relationship with Frelimo. As government, they don't take sides, because at the end of the day, this problem is on South Africa's doorstep, and South Africa must take a more neutral role, because at some point in time, South Africa will have to be brought in, because these are our neighbors. You know, many of them are in South Africa. They get they buy goods and services in South Africa. We have the borders, and we use their ports. They use our ports for trade and investment. Who can forget that Maputo corridor that is very critical for the development of South Africa, and also issues of gas, that pipeline, the Sasol gas pipeline supplying gas to South Africa. So South Africa and Mozambique cannot be enemies, and the people of South Africa and the people of Mozambique cannot be enemies. At all times, the two countries and its people must try to find a solution when there is a standoff. If there's instability in South Africa, Mozambique will be affected. It's the same with Lesotho. So it's not a question of South Africa playing a big brother, but South Africa taking a more measured position so that we, in the region, we can see that situation returning to normalcy.
Well, Sophie, thank you for speaking to all those different dynamics. Just very quickly as we wrap up, you alluded to this, but given the Mozambique corridor, the gas line supplying gas to South Africa as well from Mozambique, but also just the intertrade happening, we've obviously seen the impact that it's had on the movement of goods and people at large. It's a grim festive period as well. So talk to us about what's also being observed on that front, the economic impact as well.
Well, let's start with aviation. You are aware that the aviation sector was affected. The flights couldn't take off in Mozambique to South Africa, the same with those flights that are supposed to go to Mozambique, particularly at this time where we know that many South Africans and other people are using South Africa as a transit to Mozambique for holidays, and we know that the issue of tourism does contribute to the development of the economy in Mozambique, including South Africa. The other issue is the border, Libombo border post, where the trucks can't move, and there's a stop and go. That will affect the supply chain between South Africa and Mozambique, and not only Mozambique. As I always mention that you must remember that corridor, it stretches up to the DRC, and at times these goods end up in East Africa, and therefore that whole corridor might be affected in terms of supply chain, and therefore it becomes problematic in terms of trade and investment. And that is why South Africa, again, with that Libombo border post, they have to find a way that they manage the situation very well, not exposing those truck drivers to the dangers in Mozambique, but also trying to find a way, because they are stuck. When they get stuck, those trucks there, some of them are carrying perishable goods. Some are hungry, there's no food, and therefore you have to manage that situation very well because it's human beings that are affected. You also have to transport medicine, and it becomes problematic. So I think it's a very challenging moment. Yes, South Africa is not saying much publicly, but I think behind the scenes, many people are trying. As I pointed out yesterday, some of the academics even came to South Africa to see the former South African President Thabo Mbeki, talking to him as an elder in the region. And I'm sure they are doing the same with Chikaya Kikwete and many others in the region to try and find a solution to that challenge there in Mozambique.
Sophie, I'm also just looking at the human element beyond all of this and the possibility or bracing, South Africa and other neighboring countries bracing themselves for some political refugees or an influx of people wanting to cross the border at this time, given the uncertainty. What are you also just observing on that front at this tense time?
When there's unrest, when there's violence, when there's security instability in any country, when there's poverty, when there's hunger, when there's restlessness, people will move. When you look at what's happening in the Horn of Africa, you see that movement because of drought, and that leads to instability. With violence, it's the same. People will go to neighboring countries as they flee the conflict, and therefore South Africa being the neighbor, and Mozambicans, they know South Africa, they have relatives, they're friends. There's going to be movement there. Danger is when you have a situation where you have prison escape and you have hardened criminals. They can cross any border. They can go to Zambia. They can go to South Africa. They can go to Zimbabwe. They can go up north. When people are escaping law and to be arrested, they can go anywhere. And the issue here is that some of them were able to take those AK-47s. And therefore, the other issue will be proliferation of arms in the communities themselves and also across the border, because when people are desperate, they can sell those ammunitions to people who are involved in the bank robberies and the heist and all of that. So the issue of security generally in the region becomes a serious problem. And we've seen previously that proliferation of arms, particularly in neighboring countries that are sharing border with South Africa, where you always find the killings and all of that. So I think it will be critical for the law enforcement agencies in neighboring countries to be vigilant, but including in Mozambique, to ensure that you disarm those who took those weapons from those prison warders and those break-ins in police offices and all of that, because we are told that in some far-flung areas, people were able to go to the police stations and disarm police. And therefore, the thing with, let's not forget where Mozambique comes from in terms of civil war. You have people who are well trained, those who were the fighters of Renamo and all of that. So you don't want that situation to play itself again. And therefore, I think this time around, South Africa is not the apartheid regime. They cannot play the part or the role that was played by the apartheid regime in fueling such violence. But South Africa can be important in ensuring that that situation is resolved peacefully.
Sophie Mokoena, thank you for joining us at this hour and for providing us with that update. SABC News International Editor weighing in on the impasse that is happening in Mozambique following elections.